Oh my God. Episode 2 of the freaking pod. But episode 1 with the camera. How are we feeling today?
Good. Feeling pretty good.
Good.
Just a little busy this week. So this is nice to sit and chill.
Bees. Exactly.
It's the weekend.
Exactly. We got our chill setup here. Chill setup. And we're here to talk about a few things.
Yes.
Again, I'm Jarid. This is
Rebecca.
Miss Becca. And welcome to our pod titled Stop Lying to Yourself. Is this when we would insert the little thing? Okay. Insert the little
The jingle.
The jingle.
Stop lying to yourself.
Okay.
So, I say we dive right into our topic.
I say we do too. I agree.
So, our topic today is external and internal validation.
Yes. I mean, I think I started last week off with my thoughts. Do you want to go first?
Sure. I think, so, it's something that I feel like you're always working on, is like finding internal validation. Like, I don't feel like it's like, I've mastered this skill, like, now there's no more working on myself. I feel like you have to, like, constantly be aware, kind of like how you're aware of your biases all the time. It's not like you never have a bias. Like, you have to, like, want community and have people around. Like, we're human beings who need that. I feel like, I was trying to think, because this also relates to our next topic of toxic relationships as well.
Maybe we could just kind of talk about, like...
all of that.
Maybe we could just talk about, like, for the first topic, just as an individual.
Yeah.
Like external validation and internal validation and kind of what that does for you as a person. And then we can kind of see how it delves into the next topic as well. And, like, broaden it out to, like, how you are with your environment.
Yeah. Like, I feel like with internal validation, like, we can be a bully to ourselves. I kind of said that to you on the phone the other day, but it's like, I am the worst bully to myself. Like, I just say the worst things. Probably stuff that no one's ever even told me. I just made it up. So it's like, sometimes it's like how much of what's going on in my environment is affecting me versus, like, what I need to work on or to validate myself in.
Right.
Like, you know, if I know that I struggle with wanting validation from the people that I work with, like, has that been an ongoing issue? I kind of look at it like, have I always felt this way around these people? Have I always felt this way in this environment, like at every job I've had? Or is this really like these people aren't for me or things like that?
That's an interesting question to bring up because I've also thought about it too. Like, how much of what you tell yourself is in your head versus how much of it is objectively to other people true. Like, I think the idea of, like, self-perception too is so interesting. It goes into, like, internal and external validation because your perception of yourself is so different than what other people perceive you as.
Yeah.
And I think the most common one is that usually you see yourself worse than what other people see you.
Yeah.
But one of the things I've also thought about too is, like, what about the other flip side of the coin? If sometimes, like, do you ever worry sometimes that maybe your perception of yourself is you're nicer to yourself than what other people are to you? So, like, you give yourself grace for certain things that you have to realize that, oh, the general public or, like, other people around me, like, my general community isn't going to really have as much grace for me as I will with certain situations.
Yeah. Like the opposite kind of what I'm saying?
Yeah. You can kind of be so hard on yourself more than other people are on you. But then I've also thought about, like, the flip side of the coin of...
maybe I'm being, like, too forgiving of myself.
Yeah, maybe I'm, like, being too easy on myself and I need to kind of, like, shape up a little bit. Yeah. I don't think that's as common, but it's just something that went through my head recently that I was like, I've never thought about that before because you don't hear about it very often.
Yeah. I feel like with, like, when I started having boundaries, when I started, like, knowing what boundaries were, which I only figured out in like college. I'm like, girl, what?
I figured that out last year.
I figured that out 10 minutes ago. Like,
I figured that out 3 seconds ago.
It's like, and even then, like, what do boundaries like look like and feel like? It's so different for everyone, and like you decide if that's your boundary or not.
And that's what's so crazy too, is that it's hard to know like if your boundaries are valid or if it's kind of like you need to like be fucking for real with yourself. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to know if the boundaries are valid boundaries or if you're just like I guess I'm trying to figure out what I'm trying to say here. I'm like really close to the point.
I know what you're kind of going for. I feel like for me, it's like you can't put a boundary on everything.
Yeah.
Like there's gonna be certain things you say like to somebody that you think is a boundary, and then it's really like you like being avoidant or you not wanting to deal with conflict or like other reasoning.
It kind of goes like hand in hand with like other people being responsible for your boundaries, if that makes sense. It's kind of like when you put that responsibility onto other people. I think that's also something, because we live in a society where mental health is so much more talked about, right?
Yeah.
You know, like it's not so taboo as it used to be. So there's like a lot of people that, and there's a lot of different people on the planet, but like there's a lot of people who throw around like words like boundaries, words like toxic, words like abusive, and sometimes when we live in an echo chamber of seeing so many different people's experiences, like especially online, sometimes as a watcher or an observer, I'm kind of like, I kind of wonder like where's the line, if that makes sense. Like abusive is abusive, but we also know that there's like certain magnitudes of what that means, and I think the same thing goes for like boundaries too. Like I feel like there's magnitudes to how intense certain boundaries are.
I feel like I feel like you keep people around that are willing to tolerate your behaviors in a way.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's like one boundary for one person is going to be different for someone else. Like if you have a toxic ex out there and they date somebody else and they live a happy life, like maybe they were only toxic for me, or we were only toxic for one another. We brought out the bad in one another. But they could still live a happy and fulfilling life with somebody else. Maybe someone else, I don't know. Like, there's certain behaviors that will keep happening. I'm not excusing their behaviors, but, like, you know what I mean? Where it's like, I don't know. Like you said, like, maybe it's, like, certain people,
You're
not all in the camera.
You're blocking my shot, sir.
Here, lay down. Lay down.
Lay down. Not on me, just next to me. Good boy.
Big dummy.
He's
I don't
so
even know if
cute.
he's still in the camera, but
Oh no, it's fine.
Okay.
He was just like literally like right in front of me.
Standing up.
He's just a talking dog at this point.
we put like a microphone in front of him. He's getting comfy.
He's getting comfortable. I know that's
All
right.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah, it's so hard, especially thinking about the whole umbrella of psychology and behavior and like human emotion, because it all feels so subjective. It's hard to put an objective, factual like limit or like definition onto everything, because everything is interpretation. You can interpret a situation like 4 to 5 different ways, where you're either the good person or the bad person or a bystander. Like you can flip things however much you want. And I think that's something I've always gotten so confused about when going through like self-reflection, and also like during like the loneliest moments of my life that I needed, where I just needed to be with myself and not like influenced by external community.
Yeah.
I would get so confused within my own head, and this is something I talked about in therapy, is I was like, I don't know if I'm the good guy or the bad guy. I don't know, and I know that it's also not such a black and white thing, but it's so hard when, and I guess I'm kind of delving into the second topic too, but for example, like with toxic relationships like that have like gaslighting in them, you have a hard time discerning what actually happened versus what they told you happened. And so it's one of those things where it's kind of like, I don't know if I was at fault here or if they were at fault and they just wanted me to feel at fault. And so that's one of those things you can get so in your head about it.
Which is interesting because, like you said, like, do we even know it's gaslighting? And then you start going into a spiral.
You start gaslighting yourself.
You gaslight yourself on if you're being gaslit. And it's like, I truly believe that people who love you, like that unconditional love where it's like they truly keep you accountable and you trust them, listen to them. Like, when you're in these relationships.
Say that one more time.
People that you love unconditionally, that you trust, like, you need to listen to them.
Okay.
You need to listen to them when you're in these, like, relationships where you have, like, the love goggles on and stuff. Like, you need to trust those people around you, you know, that have those, like, obviously it's hard because it's like someone can have an opinion about your relationship and you could be like, okay, I'll take that into consideration. And then there's other times where, like, think about it, reflect on it, you know, and be like, okay, what am I not seeing in this relationship? Like, I think it's good to get that outside perspective.
I think so too. That's actually something that I struggled with. I'm not going to say struggled with, but that's something that personally, and I think a lot of other people do have the same issue, is for a long time I thought that I didn't trust what people closest to me and unconditionally loved me thought. I didn't trust what they said only because, I don't know, it's this weird thing of like, I feel like I've always only known what's best for me. And that got me in a lot of really bad situations because you put in earplugs to everybody else around you and you're only listening to what you want and what you think is good for you.
Yeah.
But what that really does is it puts you in this individual echo chamber of you kind of have shut out external influence. Like you have such a desire to not be derailed or influenced or told what to do that in the end you shut out all advice that you could have ever gotten. And I think that's how I got into the situation that I did with my past relationship, is just because after a while, the last year, it was only me and him and everybody around him. I had shut out everybody else in my personal life.
Same.
And that also had
They also usually tend to do that if they're narcissistic, which mine was.
They'll talk to you about certain members of your family or certain friends, and they'll say they'll say like, I don't disagree, or they'll be like, I don't agree with like what they're doing, like you need to disengage. And it's kind of like you believe it at the time because the person,
they're threatening to them.
Yeah, and also exactly. And also too, that person that you're with is supposed to be like that. They're supposed to be the person who truly wants the best for you outside of yourself. And so you think, oh yeah,
they must want what's best for me.
Exactly.
They love me. Exactly. You have to work in relationships. It's like, girl, you don't need to work like that. Like, not overtime.
Exactly.
That's tough. Because then there's also the love bombing and the gifts and the showering with things. So
yeah,
it's good days are great, bad days are terrible.
Exactly.
And it's like, it's up and down and up and down.
That's
Can
so
we
crazy.
coast sometimes?
I used to say that all the time. The highs are really, really high and the lows are really, really low. Like when it's amazing, it's euphoric. But when it's awful, it's the worst it can be. And I don't think that's the way that a relationship is supposed to be.
No, I don't think so.
I think a healthy relationship is really supposed to be like where if there's an issue, you can genuinely talk about it and not feel like you're going to get in trouble, not feel like you did something wrong. Shouldn't be
yelling at each other, probably.
Exactly. And the only time that yelling comes about is when one person is making another person not feel heard. And I think that if two people genuinely love each other, you want to hear each other out all the time.
Yeah.
Regardless of what your ego is and what your pride is.
Yeah. And another thing is, like, I mean, my therapist, when I saw her during that time, she had me do, like, non-negotiables. And, like, because when you meet someone and you start, especially if you're a people pleaser like me, and you start molding to people's personalities and you don't know who you are anymore, it's like, usually you're hanging on to these people because you don't even know your identity. You don't even know who you are. Mm-hmm. As soon as I started knowing who I was or what I wanted to do in life, I got Basil, my dog, and I was like, I can do this on my own. Like, he's weighing me down. Like, it's like when you start noticing that about yourself, like the more secure you are and the more you work on yourself, you'll realize who are the people you want around. You want people who energize you, who you can connect with. Like, we're friends because I feel like you bring value to my life, just like any other relationship.
That's so sweet. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I know we haven't known each other for very long, but I think that, like, being in a new place, I think reaching out to somebody and, like, embracing them and welcoming them with open arms, like, that means a lot, because I've been around everywhere, you know what I mean? And so it's like I've always been like an addition to the friend group, and so it's been kind of nice that, like, you've really, like, brought me in and been, like, wanted me to be involved in things and, like, wanted to get to know me, and that means a lot as well. Aww. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, y'all may think that we've been friends forever.
No,
but
it's been like not even 3 months. It's been.
But it's fun. We're exploring each other. Like, I'm genuinely like, what is he gonna say next? And I feel like that's fun, because then, and that's how I want my friendships to always be. Even my relationships, I'm like, I want to learn more about people, and like, there's always something to learn. Like, you're gonna have a light bulb moment or have a change in your life, and I want to go with the flow of that.
That's like, so sweet. I appreciate that. That's so sweet. Like, you want to be there for that.
Yeah.
I love that. I
want to be a part of the changes in, like, a good way.
Yeah. That's so sweet. That's so kind to hear. I love that. Thank you.
I feel like we still need, and I tell people this all the time because I work with kids, I'm like, I feel like as adults we need more praise than we get. Like, we need more love. Like, you would get praise for everything as a kid. Like,
we do.
Great job on your test. Like, amazing doing this. And, like,
you
all
ate
the time.
4 cheese and crackers instead of 3. I'm so proud of you today that you did that. That you ate all your food off your plate.
And it's like,
and then as an adult, you're kind of like, I have to eat all this because I paid for it.
Literally. I'm like, I don't know. And I feel like we, like, shy away from that as adults because it's like, I don't know why. I think we just grow out of the habit of it.
But I want to go back to something you said a few minutes ago. You were saying, like, you feel like a lot of the reason why, especially if you're somebody, because I said last week, I feel like I've always prided myself on being a very adaptable person. However, that gets you in very dangerous places. And I think this is where we're kind of similar, is that when you want other people to feel as comfortable as you want to feel, you
endanger yourself.
You are oftentimes at the mercy of that person's behavior, and so you kind of mold around how they are. And
that's where external validation comes in, because now my feelings are based on how you feel.
Exactly. And so you were talking about, like, you like, people similar to us and similar to those who exhibit those behaviors cling on to these relationships because they really don't have a solid idea of what makes them tick. I think it's weird because I said last week that I've always had a solid sense of self, but I think that I had gotten so comfortable. I think I had stamped myself with an identity so early in my life as, like, actor, entertainer, singer, that was always what I just was, and I didn't give myself any leg room to actually, like, stretch my legs and figure out other things that make me happy. And it really wasn't until, like getting your dog and, like, running for you, it's like, when I started figure skating, and I had this amazing coach back in California, and she's one of those people where her spirit lingers, you know, like, she just has this energy about her that is just, like, infectious. And I remember right after my breakup, she was, like, the sole person at that time where, like, she kept, like, the fire lit under my butt, because she was like, you know, every day that we wait, because I think her dad died when she was really young in, like, a motorcycle accident, and, like, she's lost a lot of people in her life, but she was saying, like, every day that we wake up alive, we owe it to the people who didn't wake up today to keep going. And that was a long way of saying, like, when I found an activity of my own that did not involve him whatsoever, it became such a safe space for me, and it was really the first pillar of me finding out kind of finding my determination again, my ambition, my spirit, my drive, like all, like my spark again.
Like feeling empowered too.
Exactly, and by something that was internal. Like,
oh, it's the best. It's
the
best feeling.
It is the best feeling, and it's,
no one can take that away from you.
Exactly.
I love that shit.
Exactly, especially when you've gone years. Because in my case, it was like 3 years, 3 solid years where I had, like, at the beginning of the relationship, I didn't feel bad for my opinions. I didn't feel bad about speaking them. I was a very outspoken person, and it's so interesting looking back in that timeline, and as the time goes by, the different methods that he used to control my voice, to control my behaviors, control my opinions, and by the end, it's kind of like what he thought I thought. And it's like if there were questions that were posed, I would look to him to kind of be like, well, what does he think, kind of thing.
And then now, when you make decisions now, it's like difficult to make decisions on your own. And I think then it starts becoming like you're not independent anymore, and like difficulties making choices. Like the other day, like I worked myself through my panic attack and was like, I need to figure this out on my own. I need to go through this and not call anybody. And like, that doesn't mean people aren't here for you and that you can't ask for help. But there's certain times where it's like really good for yourself to allow yourself to get through it by yourself.
Exactly. Because you need to know for yourself more than anybody that you can be self-sufficient in moments when you direly have to. Like you need like it's good to know that you have a support system around you, but you also at the same time for yourself need to know that I am strong enough. You need to show yourself that like I am strong enough to get through these intermittent issues on my own, and I can, you know what I mean? And so for the days when you really can't do that for yourself, you know that you have a support system to reach out to. You know?
I think it creates stronger relationships because when you're like, working on that stuff within yourself, and you can still talk about something once you've kind of processed it by yourself. So I'll process something I'm going through, some sort of, worry I have. And then I'll be like, let me process why, what's going on, how am I feeling about it, all of that by myself, instead of like being in the crisis and asking for help, because then I'm very susceptible to others' opinions and to changing how I feel, or it's like I'm vulnerable. You know?
And it also creates like a subconsciously codependent mindset that you it's like it's a fail safe. It's that becomes a go-to all the time. I was talking to my friend the other day because she had like a major anxiety attack, and she like took a bunch of Xanax and not a ton. She didn't like. She's not.
I know what you mean.
She's not an addict, but like she took a Xanax, like went into her Xanax coma, and she woke up and she still felt weird, and she was like, my anxiety attacks always do this to me, where it's like I'll have a really bad one, and I wake up and it feels like everything reset, and like all the progress that's been made has gone out the window, and my life's falling apart. And she was talking to me over the phone, and she was like, right after she had said all that, she was like, but I have to remember that like before the anxiety attack, everything was fine. Yeah. Everything was okay. And just because it's a bad day doesn't mean it has to be a bad week. Doesn't mean that it has to be a bad life. It just means I had a bad day. I need to accept that it was a bad day for that. And when I wake up tomorrow's a new day. Yeah. Which is funny because going back to last week, we were saying that we hate cliches. We hated cliches for so long, but that's another one. You wake up, tomorrow's a new day, and that's something
building resilience.
Yeah, that's something to find comfort in, that tomorrow is a new day. That's the reset. And it doesn't, and just because you have a bad day doesn't mean that it undoes all of the progress that you've made thus far. Yeah. Because your mind can spiral, it can go down the drain and start thinking about the past and everything bad that happened and how it's affected you now. And it's kind of like you can't. My mom always says that you have to look in the rearview window, put all of that stuff in the rearview window, and any time that you find yourself wanting to look back at the rearview window. Rearview mirror. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I was like...
Yeah, anytime that you find yourself trying to look there, it's like, nope, gotta stay looking ahead at the road, because if I don't look at the road, I'm gonna get in an accident.
Yeah.
And
that's definitely true. Like, you can... Because I've let myself do it before. I've let myself just stare in the rearview mirror for too long, you know? Or maybe I did it so long that I almost got in an accident. Well, not in like in actual mental health terms, not in a real.
In a metaphorically,
Yeah.
I dipped into a whole metaphor there.
Yeah,
I'm
like
poetic like that,
I love
though.
metaphors, because it just helps you visualize your feelings and thoughts, and it's good to put like names to it. Like I like to like call anxiety different names or depression, and like you know, have them be like a third person, and like not just me, and it's like helpful. It's helpful with the people I work with too, but oof, yeah, all of that's very interesting.
There's been a lot of people. There's been people that I've run into that I've met before, and because I think this is the last thing I'll say about like the internal validation, then we can kind of go into like toxic relationships and stuff. But I think that I've met so many people where they've either just gotten out of like years of living off of external validation, or people who are still very much in the throes of just that. Like I know so many people where for so many years they drank all the time, they were smoking all the time, they felt like they couldn't have a good time if they weren't out partying, if they weren't with friends, at the clubs, like all that stuff. And I've talked to these people and I've noticed, I'm like, God, so much of your opinions that you have formed have come either straight from the internet or straight from everybody else around you. And I think that it's not even something that they say. It's an energy that you can feel when you're talking to them that feels aimless. It's kind of like you still got a lot to figure out about yourself, and
You don't truly believe it either.
Exactly. I was literally I was talking to myself in the car on the way here about somebody that I know, and I was thinking, I was like, why are our conversations kind of make me want to just like scream at the top of my lungs towards the end of them? And I was like, it's because they don't talk with conviction. You know, they say a lot of stuff. They say that they're in their healing era and they're like, this is the best their life has ever been. Everything's perfect. And I'm like, but it sounds like you're just talking to talk. It doesn't sound like you're saying any of this with like a strong conviction that you believe that is what is going on. You know what I mean? Like,
Maybe they're like trying to fake it till they make it. Like, I'm just gonna like.
And that's a method. You know, I'm not going to shame that because that is also a method as well.
It is. Like, that's especially when you're like in a deep depression. There's sometimes that you just have to like put one foot in front of the other and just keep moving forward and like not think about. Like, I tell myself all the time, right now is not the time to think if I want to do this or not. I'm aware I don't want to do these things all the time when I get depressed.
Right.
But I tell myself, right now we can't think about if we want to. This is the plan, and this is what we're going to do.
Put your brain on autopilot and just like...
This is what I'm going
do.
to do. And if I get repercussions, if I get consequences, we'll deal with it afterwards and be like, okay, I did too much or too little, and then we try again.
Exactly.
But to not know and to not try actually makes anxiety worse or depression worse because you're thinking, what if?
Also, yeah, exactly. And you're either focusing on the wrong things or you're dealing with things in an avoidant manner.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like anxiety is quite literally the fear of the unknown. And if you're not trying to figure out, you know, why things happen when they happen, it's kind of like you're just always, or if you're not trying to figure out yourself why you behave the way you do, why you think the way you do, or act the way you do, if you don't try to figure those things out for yourself, you're always going to be anxious because you're never going to have a solid 2 feet on the ground. And I think that, like, when I keep looking at the camera because I'm waiting for it to like go off, but I think that, like, when I found a video the other night and it was me about a year ago, and it was a totally different person. It was just like unshowered, had slept all day, puffy eyes, and I just like set my camera up and I was just looking at myself in the camera and I could see, it was so weird. It was like this mirror moment where I was like looking back at something that was totally unrecognizable. It made me so sad because I was like in the depths of that, you don't know what to do or where to go, and you can get so sunken into the fact of, this is what I've become, and how did I let myself become this, instead of focusing on, okay, I can always do better. I can go get that haircut. I can go take that shower, and it doesn't matter if it's at 11 a.m. or if it's at 3 p.m.
That's a huge one.
I still took that shower today.
Yeah.
And
that's a huge one, is like not worrying about like the logistics of things, and more just the bigger picture of like, this is what I did. Like, and like you said, what's probably helping you now is to look back and be like, look how much I've grown and progressed.
Exactly, because even if there are hiccups, like I think I had a hiccup like a week and a half ago, even if there are hiccups, you can look back on all the reminders of how far you've come, and the things that you can take pride in that didn't rely on anybody else. Or you could, like, I've built a better relationship with my family. It's like, now I can look at like where I was with my family a year ago versus where I am now, and it's like, when you get in those hiccup spots or those mindsets where it's like you feel like you're back to where you were at the very beginning, you have to remind yourself, I'm not. You're not. I'm just having a bad day.
And you're not going backwards. It's impossible.
Exactly.
It's impossible to go backwards.
Because once
you're the only you right now in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's true. You can, and that's what helps me feel like motivated too, is you can be whoever you want to be any day. Mm-hmm. Wake up and be who you want to be today. If I told you, like, and I think it was from Atomic Habits, that book.
You didn't tell me about this.
Yeah, Atomic Habits.
Okay.
It's a really good book, and that's helpful too if you feel like you just like kind of don't know how to form habits and stuff. And he says in the book, he's like, if you say, I'm not a runner, if you say that, then that's going to really honestly manifest. He doesn't say manifest, but basically it's going to manifest like you not doing the behavior of running as much. Mm-hmm. And so like you have to start telling yourself, I am a runner, or I am a hard worker, or like those affirmations, like it's real.
It's
like,
important.
Now we don't need to do those. Like, I think I used to like get annoyed of affirmations and be like frustrated and be like, what is this? Like, I wouldn't believe it.
It's almost like astrology. It's like hippie spiritual shit that you're kind of like,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
But then I realized like you have to like, it has to be like curated to you. Like, it has to be something that like you're like, you truly need to hear from yourself. Mm-hmm. Like, and I actually like doing them. Like, I don't like repeating random ones on like a video, but really just like making my own.
Yeah.
And like using my own. But yeah, or things that I need to hear. Like anytime that I'm getting upset about something and I'm like, like not good enough. I'm like, you are good enough and stuff, and just talking back to yourself. Like giving yourself the opposite. Like how I said with the what ifs, like what really helped me with depression is when I would be like, you know, so scared about something so deeply, and then I would say the opposite. Well, if I'm like, and I'm going to get deep here, but it's like, if I'm scared of death, which I'm scared of death at times, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, like, you know, what if I didn't live this fulfilling life or whatever? And I'm like, well, me sitting here thinking about it is definitely not going to give me a fulfilling life. Yeah. And I'm like having to rationalize that with myself and be like, okay, well, let's just live it up and do the best we can and like connect. And like, honestly, doing the best you can as well is another thing where it's like, sometimes your best is not going to look the same every day. Like,
exactly. And also too, this is, I'm going to go back to what you said about the whole, I'm not a runner mindset, and then you're not going to do the behaviors as a runner. You established last week, I figure skate, and I spend a lot of time doing it. And I started doing it seriously like a year ago. Like, beforehand, I had done it for another year, but I only went like once a week, and there was no progress. But I really started taking it seriously, and and I never videoed myself, but when I started videoing myself, I looked so much better than I thought I was. And I was doing a lot of things that I didn't even realize that I was doing, like certain skills. And it wasn't until my coach was like, well, you're a figure skater now. Like, you know how to skate. Like, you're a skater now. And it wasn't until I was like, I had that same moment where I was like, bitch, I am a figure skater now.
Yes.
I can do some cool shit. And it wasn't until, and that was really when I started like gaining confidence and not having, I mean, I wasn't fearful trying things to begin with, but I really wasn't fearful of going and trying new things, because I was like, bitch, I'm one of these people trying all this stuff, and I have the ability to do it, so I'm going to do it. And I'm going to open that up to like, if you talk to like a lot of like bigger athletes too, a lot of the times you'll notice that their backgrounds and like even talking to their parents, like what you were saying about just doing the best you can is really the best you can do, even if your best isn't amazing that day.
It's get out on that run. I don't care if you walk, I don't care if you jog, you run, you're still a runner, we're still finishing this.
Exactly. It's a consistency thing. It's consistency, and also it's a spiritual consistency. You have to get up and it's a trade-off, but like if you're able to establish an actual belief in yourself of kind of like, I may not do this today, but I'm going to do it at some point. You know, it's kind of like the law of attraction. It's like, you may not be manifesting it every single day, but if you want something, you're going to find a way to attract that into your life and get it. So I think that, I think that
I do that with money. I mean, I try to manifest money all the time. I'm like, I'm going to make $100K a year. Like, and that is an attainable goal, like with what my career is. And I may make more than that, but I'm like, it definitely helps to say that you will be with stuff that's attainable. You know, you don't want to be like, I will be married, because sometimes it doesn't work out as planned. You could be like, and this is, goes into like therapy talk, where it's like rational emotive therapy, which is like the shoulds and the have to and the need. Those words sometimes, like his name's Albert Ellis, and he like very much says like, if you say like, I need to get married, like I will be getting married, it may actually cause more harm than good, because now there's no room for it not to happen, and that can end up making you feel like more emotionally charged by it.
This is a really dumb analogy, but it's something that my mom always says. My mom grew up in the 80s, and she loves aerobics. She was an aerobics girl, but there's this like Brazilian butt lift video that she used to do all the time, like in the morning, and she always used to say this during moments when like I would be putting too much pressure on something, like the musts and the needs and the have-tos. She was like, my Brazilian butt guy says that when you're stretching, in order to stretch effectively, you can't force the stretch, you have to allow the stretch. And that's a similar connection to like any goals that you have in life. You can't force things to happen. You kind of have to,
I like the allowing.
You have to put forth your best efforts with the best intentions you have, but you also have to allow certain things
and let go of others
outside of what you force to happen. If you try to force it too much, people can smell that. It's like desperation. People can smell desperation.
It's true. And you're going to get, not that I'm going to say you're going to get disappointed, but there's more likelihood for disappointment, which again, it's okay to be disappointed. But if like, that's not going to set you up for success if like you're setting like unrealistic goals. Like I used to do like crazy things in my planner, would never be able to do it. And I'm like, oh, well, it's my fault. It's my fault I couldn't get these things done. And then something I'm still working on now, which is my worth is based on how productive I am.
That was a huge one for me.
Yeah.
For so many years, I totally get that.
It's also the society we're in, like the working culture. Like our parents definitely reinforce that behavior. Oh, you're in school and you have a job that's full time and you're taking care of yourself and the bills. It's like you're set up for success. You're living the dream, and you're just like, what about let's be happy that, you know, I have a new hobby that brings me joy, or that I set boundaries at my workplace, or you know. But some of that is not really like what they're concerned about. Like some parents, it's like they have this goal of like you have you have a job that pays you, you're independent, like, okay, they're good to be on their own. Our job is done.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I had to realize, because again, not only external validation as from earlier, but also wanting that validation from your parents and stuff like that.
100%. 100%. I think that's something that even my parents started realizing as well. And not to just talk about myself all the time, but I'm just like...
No, we're both talking about ourselves.
Using my experiences to kind of relate to a broader topic, because I know that these are all universal feelings.
Yeah.
But I remember, like, a lot of the times I would do things for the approval of my parents, and as I got to an adult, my parents were kind of like, you're an adult. Like, do these things for yourself. Like,
or I started doing things, like, I agree with that, because I would do things, and then I'd be like... I would actually end up enjoying it myself and not needing it anymore from them, which is funny. It's like you work so hard to this goal for someone to see you, and then it doesn't go as planned. So then you end up having to just do things for you. Like, you end up figuring that out at some point.
Yeah. I mean, at a certain point, like, you grow older, and, I mean, you grow older, and you... There's, like, a timeline that everybody goes through in their lives. You get out of school... You get a job and you start meeting people, get into relationships, like, and you just kind of realize that we have such a limited idea of what life is supposed to be like when we're younger and still in high school and still growing up. And as an adult, you realize that life is literally every individual person's oyster. You can do anything that you want in your life, just as long as it serves you, makes you happy, and makes you feel the best about yourself. Because, and not in a selfish way too, if you feel the best about yourself, you're going to make everybody else around you feel the best about themselves.
I started noticing that. Like, in this last year, I had a huge, like, okay, like, I want to be a kind and open person who's loving and, like, empathetic. And everyone can read that now, like, because that's the person that I portray myself to be, but it's also the person I truly am on the inside. And, like, it took a while to get there and accept, because I used to be so mad at myself, like, why am I so sensitive? Like, why do I always want to talk about mental health? Ironically, look at us now.
Talking about mental health all the time.
Like, I used to, like, get annoyed at myself, or because probably of what other people told me, oh, Rebecca, she's always talking about this, and instead I was like, yep, I enjoy that. I actually enjoy doing this, and I want people around who enjoy me talking about it. It's something that I like. It's like, it's something that I enjoy in my life. So it's like, I think maybe I felt discouraged because I didn't have the right people around who, like, either they were, like, emotionally unavailable. They could not.
I was gonna say, I think a lot of times when you talk about mental health, like, there's still this, like, I'm not gonna say there's a stigma around mental health, because there really isn't a stigma around mental health anymore. But
I mean, there's some, but
there still is a stigma around mental health, but only to people who, and this was the point I was gonna go for, with what you were talking about. I think the only reason that anybody would make you feel bad for talking about mental health is people who haven't thought about it themselves and who are too scared to approach it because of what they might find out about themselves.
Yeah.
Mental health is one of those things where it's kind of like, it's an individual thing. You know what I mean? You get out of it as much as you want to get from it, because it all comes from, like, it comes from your own volition. You know what I mean? And sometimes you can go down, definitely gone down a mental health rabbit hole where I've been like, okay, I'm, like, over psychoanalyzing myself too much. I need to just, like...
Oh, yeah.
I've done that way too much, where I'm just like...
Being too self-aware can be damaging.
I'm like, girl, shut the...
It's like... But usually when I start doing that is when I realize, let me go see some friends. Let me go, like, get out of my head. Or, like, yeah, there's times to get out of your head for sure. Let me go on a run and forget about this. Like, it's okay to put it to the side for a little bit when it's, like, damaging you. But
I think it's preferable to be over self-aware than not self-aware at all. I think that, like, people who aren't self-aware are usually the ones who end up hurting people the most. And it's usually people who can't accept that they have to take accountability for something, that they've made mistakes. And that was one of the things that, like, I used to be incredibly defensive as well. And one of the things that, like, my friend in California...
That's surprising to me. You seem so open now.
Because we've had so many character arcs, y'all. But not even defense, and the defensiveness never came from a place of I needed to be right. It came from a place of I failed. You know what I mean? It was always a place of like, it was always a self-deprecating thing. It wasn't that like I was mad at other people for telling me that I was wrong. It was kind of like, it was a frustration at myself that I screwed up. And I was like, God, I didn't want to screw up though. But I think one of the biggest
That's interesting too, because the other people probably didn't think that you thought that. They probably just thought like, oh, they hate me, or, you know, like whatever. And then
a lot of it comes across as very self-righteous, and that's one of the things I've gotten before is like, you're so self-righteous, and I'm like, okay, I need to take a step back because I know that's not who I am, but I need to figure out what's going on within myself so that I cannot be giving other people a perception of myself that I know isn't me. But a huge mental shift I went through is realizing that accountability is one of the easiest things to do. Out of everything in life, saying sorry and saying, you're right, I screwed up, I made a mistake, that's the easiest thing that you can ever do as a human being. And also, the reason why it's the easiest is because it, quite literally, like a cement truck putting down fresh pavement, it is smooth sailing from there, because
no one's gonna be mad about that.
No one's gonna be mad about you taking accountability and saying sorry, unless it's somebody who just wants to be mad at you and doesn't want to forgive you.
They need to take a break, or they shouldn't be in your life if they're like that all the time.
Exactly, because then that's somebody who seeks out issues and seeks out dysfunction. But that's
very interesting, because I'm like, I feel like I've been saying that, and sometimes I'll get frustrated and I'll be like, why can't people just take freaking accountability? Like, like the world would just be so much better if people could just be honest sometimes.
Exactly.
Stop lying to yourself.
Stop lying to yourself. Exactly.
Seriously, start being honest. Like, and sometimes it's uncomfortable, or sometimes I'll be wanting to be petty. Of course it is. I want to be petty as hell to someone, but then I'm like, instead I choose the route of, what did I do and what can I take accountability for? And I do that. That does not mean to have someone who, like, soaks that all, like, takes that all in, like toxic relationships where it's like, okay, like, you could take accountability too much where you're like, sorry to everything.
I know that too well.
And then that could be a struggle as well.
Yeah.
So it's
because
kind of
then you're allowing somebody to take advantage of you and you're taking advantage of yourself.
Yeah.
You're not giving that. You're not giving.
And also, it's not as meaningful.
Exactly. You're not giving that consideration. You're not getting that consideration back from somebody. It's because I think to tell somebody that I've screwed up and to take accountability, honestly, that's a gift to give people, because you're showing people vulnerability and saying, I'm being vulnerable with you, and I'm trusting you to tell you that I was wrong. And if somebody takes advantage of you being vulnerable and saying, yeah, you were wrong, I'm going to punish you now, then that's when it becomes abusive. Because you're actually taking the higher road, you're doing the right thing, and when somebody kind of almost in the sadistic manner gets off on you being wrong and them being right, then it becomes a power dynamic that is abusive and toxic on their side, that maybe you didn't ask for, but now you're stuck in.
Yeah, because narcissistic people, like, they aren't all necessarily abusive. If you're aware of being narcissistic, like, I recommend go to therapy, because most of them don't, or they're only recommended to go to therapy. Because
that's like one of the biggest holdups with being narcissistic is that you don't think that you're wrong, or you need the idea or the image of yourself in your own mind to be so lofty that accepting that you did anything wrong would destroy that image within yourself. Because where extreme narcissism comes from is extreme insecurity. Yeah.
So it's funny because it's like the exact opposite of what they're trying to portray. It's like only wanting to portray certain images of themselves and to be perceived whenever they want to be perceived. It's always on their terms. Which is like,
that's such a good
I think
point.
It comes from also the innate, like, people who aren't empathetic, you know? Like, it's hard for them to understand where people are coming from. So I feel like with narcissists, we need, like, a they probably have it out there, but like a course where it's like how to be empathetic. Like it's a skill. It's a skill. Like
it is.
Talking about mental health, expressing your emotions, like learning all the stuff we've described this entire episode is a privilege, something that I've worked hard at as a skill, you know?
Exactly. And I commend you for that. I mean, and I'm about to go into the same thing, but you've made a career out of doing that. You're really passionate about that. It is a skill to understand your feelings and also attempt to understand other people's feelings. Understanding the human psyche is a skill. Yeah. And if you're able to do it, this is a hot take that might be a little controversial, but I truly think that being able to hold that skill. Oh, this sounds so self-serving because I realize I'm doing it. But I genuinely mean it in a sense of, I think that, I feel like I lost how I was going to say it, but something along the lines of, I think that level of intelligence also goes along with being connected to your emotions as well. I think that,
I mean, it is an intelligence, like emotional intelligence.
Yeah, like emotional intelligence. I think that, like, I lost my point because I started worrying too much about how it would sound.
No, I mean,
but I meant it in a certain way that I couldn't get it out.
The thing with me, I can't tell you about different cities and capitals and things, and some people, that's their niche, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's like they've worked hard to like academically perform well, whereas for me, I just did all right and I could skid by, but then this is what I was good at. Mm-hmm. And for a while I was like, being a woman who talks about emotions, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be put in a box. Like I want to be a scientist. I want to like, but sometimes you have to be real with yourself and be like, what am I good at? I mean, I can always learn science and still enjoy it and things like that. And I could do that. I could change my career at any point if I want to. But if I'm good at this, like, what am I doing? Like, let's do it. Like, stop looking at it like something that, like, you're trying to change all the time and just embrace it.
Right. I think I know what I was trying to say. I was trying to say that if you run away from trying to understand yourself emotionally and try to understand the world emotionally, you cheat yourself from getting smarter. That's what I was saying. That's what I was trying to say. I was in layman's terms, I was going to say, like, if you don't have that emotional skill, then you're dumb. But that's obviously not what I meant. Yeah. I meant that if you don't have that natural curiosity, and if you don't push yourself to be curious,
I like that curiosity.
If you don't push yourself to be curious about how you're feeling, what your dynamic is with people, how you're affecting the world, how you're affecting yourself, you cheat yourself from becoming so much more knowledgeable. Like my dad has always told me, knowledge is power. Yeah. The more that you know, the more power you hold over how you and. Not even power in a negative connotation, but
not like I'm powerful.
But impact. The more impact you have, the more that you know, because you can spread more knowledge. And I think that when we go back to talk about like the stigma around mental health, I feel like embracing that mental health is just a thing that all people deal with. That you're smarter for it. You're going to
want to know more.
Yeah,
that's life. That's the fun part about life, is that you get to learn.
Exactly.
You have the opportunity to learn, the opportunity to grow, and the opportunity to connect with people. I mean, that's what makes me happy.
Exactly. You're setting yourself up for more success, even if whatever field you go into doesn't have to do with emotions and psychology. Like, understanding people is part of every workplace. It's part of every environment you go into. And so I think the people who are scared to do that, it's I would highly encourage that, because I used to have a huge stigma around therapy. I used to think that if you went to therapy, your family didn't love you enough and you were weak and you couldn't figure it out yourself. But the truth is what therapy is it's an outside perspective with years of education and it's just simply another person to look at your situation that you are clearly struggling with and giving you another spin on it and giving you something more to think about that might give you a reprieve. from shit you've been struggling with. I mean, I think that I know people personally who have gone through traumatic stuff from the time that they were like 10 years old, and it's been decades later. And I'm like, there are things in your life dating back to the stuff that you went through that is affecting your behavior now. It's getting you into trouble now. But if you went to someone who doesn't know you, who just sees you for what you are when you walk into the room, it's a therapist is someone that you can tell anything to. It's all confidential, you know. I mean,
they don't know all the other characters in your life.
Exactly.
And they get to see you as the main character, and they get to recognize your patterns. Like, you're sitting there, and their whole goal is to understand where you're coming from, to hear you out. Well, the good therapist. And because
there's some bad ones.
Yeah, and to, like you said, treat you as someone that they want to wholeheartedly know. Like, in the classes that I'm in, it's all about unconditional positive regard. And, like, it's like Carl Rogers. But it's, like, person-centered, basically. And, like, their goal should never be to harm you, but to challenge your thoughts, and to notice your patterns, and to... Because there's so many times you go in there and they say something to you and you're like, oh, shit. Like, it's like... And sometimes you don't believe it when they say it the first time. And there's times where...
About the not believing it, the therapist?
No, the client.
The client, okay.
Mm-hmm. Me as the client. I've, like, gone in and, like, I didn't believe, like, when my therapist told me when I was, like, 16.
Okay, got it.
Like, when she was like, you know, maybe you don't feel like you're good enough. I'm like, what's that bullshit? Come on. she just says that to every client. And then, like, over time, I was like, fuck. Like...
She's right.
And so that was before I took a lot of accountability for things. But it's so much better to just let go and be like, this is who the fuck I am. And if someone says shit about me, like, now I don't really get offended most of the time. Unless it's something that I'm currently going through that, like, they don't know about or something. Mm-hmm. Most of the time I can understand when someone's upset with me. Like, I start noticing, like, what's going on with them, inside of them.
Right.
I don't know what your day was like. Like, we can't have the whole world revolve around us.
And I've always said, I was talking to my friend, and I've had conversations with my parents about, like, people with anger issues. Because when I was a kid, I used to have really bad anger issues. I was, like, violent up until I was, like, 11. Mm-hmm. Which is crazy because I can't remember the last time I touched a fly. You know?
Yeah,
I mean? Like,
I know. You don't seem like that.
I'm not violent anymore at all. But as a kid, I had terrible anger issues. And what I've always found so interesting is that I think anger is an emotion that is very misinterpreted a lot of the times. And when I see it in other people, I'm like, the same sentence always goes through my head. It's like, anger comes from extreme hurt. And most of the time, after someone's angry, they cry. And it's because they're so angry, they don't know what to do. They're so frustrated that they can't change a certain thing. And it comes from just incredible pain. And so I think...
You feel sad, you feel shameful, you feel confused. There's so many other feelings that go along with anger. Anger is a front a lot of times. It's easier to be angry. It's easier to go in traffic and flick someone off. It's
like a thunderstorm. It's like you hear all the big booms from a thunderstorm, the lightning cracks, and then it pours. There's a ton of rain.
I think people are afraid of therapy because, not only because it would, like, open up wounds and stuff like that and vulnerabilities, but more that I think that sometimes they think, like I said, they're like me where they go in and they're like, that can't be right, or this is, like, bullshit. Like, they don't think that those deeper feelings or meanings that maybe other people have, like, they could have too. Yeah. It's like we have the blinders on of, like, I'm different than everybody else. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you are. You are an individual, and nobody is like you in many ways. But there's other ways that we can connect with people and be like somebody else.
Sometimes there's comfort in knowing that you're not special. You know, it's a balance of you are special, but at the same time, in the moments where we feel like we are uniquely screwed up, you're not. Everybody feels uniquely screwed up, and in that sense, no one's screwed up. You know, if we all are, but I think that feeling of anger often turns into, like, resentment, and I think that if you've got, and this doesn't apply to everybody, but I think that people who are are incredibly averted to going to therapy. I think that a lot of it has to do with you've gotten so used to dealing with these feelings and emotions on your own that you don't think it's physically possible for somebody to help you out. And I think that, like, if you've been
like
dealing...
you're not like it's like hopeless or...
Yeah. And I think that you've just gotten so used to it that you're like, there's no one anybody could say to make me feel any different. And I think that sometimes there are so many people, especially in the older generations, because it was more taboo back then. I think that it's the things that they suffer with internally for 40 years, they could easily probably start healing in a year and a half.
They're probably like, there's too much to unpack at this point in their head.
But baby steps, it's baby
like,
doll.
Girl, yeah, let's just work on one issue at a time.
Yeah, you can't expect to go to therapy 3 times and be on step 250. You gotta start at step 5, you know what I mean? Like, you have to go in little increments, and it's progress in life I've found is very exponential. It isn't, I mean, it's not linear, but a lot of the times if you trust the process, it goes up so quickly.
Be open-minded, be curious, and be kind.
And stop lying to yourself, girls, because let's be honest here. And we'll all be a lot happier.
I think we end it there.
Yeah. And on that note, should we say it together, the title?
Yeah.
On that note, stop lying to yourself.
Stop lying to yourself.